Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar. My name is Michelle Jury. I work at ASEC as the Communications Officer. Welcome to the ASEC Member Engagement Forum Coastal Hubs. Today's topic is Shaping the Hubs Landscape, Enabling the Future Coastal Entrepreneurs. And it is my pleasure to invite Esther Ndeti, the ASEC Engagement Advisor. Welcome, Esther.
And good afternoon, everybody. Hello, for those who are unfamiliar with who I am. My name is Esther Ndeti. I am Executive Director at the East Africa Venture Capital Association, but I'm also Engagement Advisor at ASEC. And I want to thank all of you for participating in this Member Engagement Forum, which I anticipate to be an exciting conversation on, on the state of hubs in the coastal region and the future of hubs in the coastal region as well. And today we're joined by, an incredible panel from Ngosa, Mupela, Milton Anyiro, Robert Mrima, and David Ogega. And our moderator, Cindy Ogega, who's founder and director of Mombasa Works. But before we get into that entire conversation, I've been asked to, is there a way to see, like a show of hands to understand who here is not familiar with ASEC? Do you have the function to raise hands? So Twahir, you're not familiar with ASEC. Who else is unfamiliar with ASEC? Bernard, are you familiar with ASEC? Bernard Shearer is our chair of the board. Okay, for the benefit of Twahir, I will give a brief introduction into ASEC. ASEC is an association that was set up to represent the interests of organizations that support the development and the growth of startups and SME enablers across the country, and to help with the maximizing the impact of their activities. So ASEC as an organization plays a key role to be the voice of SME enablers, and the enablers here stands for hubs, and that's incubators, working spaces, accelerators, but also consulting firms that work with SMEs and startups across Kenya to ensure that the entrepreneurial activity and entrepreneurs in this country are well supported, and we can promote their activities and take them to the next level and ensure there's an economic breakthrough in Kenya. The network is slightly over a year old, and the membership has grown to more than 40 members so far. And they're spread across the country. So we're really, appreciative to have the coastal region represented with us here today. So this member engagement forums will seek to be a deep dive into the different regions. We had one on the lake side hubs, and this afternoon we're looking at the coastal region.
I'd like to let the panel introduce themselves and what hubs they represent, what they do, how what role they play in the ESO ecosystem, and then we'll be able to take it from there. Hopefully by that time, Cindy will be back with us. So we can start with, I'll just start from the first person I can see on my screen. David, tell us who you are.
Hey everyone, thank you very much, Brenda, for the invitation and the opportunity to speak in this forum. Yeah, so my name is David Ogega. Yeah, so I'm the co-founder and director of Startup Hub, which is a business incubator in Voi, Taita Taveta. We work with high schools and universities and develop startups ideas from that level. At the same time, I'm also the chairperson of Countrywide Innovation Hubs. And yeah, so it's a pleasure to be here and looking forward to sharing and as well as learning from the panel and the participants. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next, we have Milton. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Brenda, and thank you, the ASEC community and the conveners of the meeting of today. My name is Milton Anyiro. I represent TechBridge Invest. We are based in Mombasa. That is at City Mall, second floor. Basically what we do, we invest in early stage startups and also acceleration startups. My role entails about being able to work with the startups to be able to build their financials, to tie them up with their business model, with their customers, and up to the market. It's a pleasure to be involved in this meeting of today because it's a very important meeting together to be able to build synergies. Thank you.
Thank you, Milton. Ngosa?
Hi, everybody. My name is Ngosi Mupela. I am the Business and Investment Manager of Close the Gap Limited. I think we're probably the newest one on the block. We are a social enterprise with really two main lines of business. And the first is in our name. We try to bridge the digital divide by closing the gap in terms of delivering ICT, refurbished ICT equipment to impact clients. These would be schools, universities, students, etc. And the other side of our business, which is closer to being an enabler, is we have an incubation space that we built out here in Ratna Square in Mombasa, where we will be running entrepreneurship and education programs targeted at the youth in Mombasa to really help them be able to take an idea and conceive it from business all the way to, conceive an idea and turn it into a real business that can generate income. I think lastly, one of the other products that we do is we develop what we call DigiTrucks, which are mobile learning units, basically a mobile computer lab on a truck, and we use these to really deliver digital skills learning in remote areas across Kenya and in other countries on the continent. So I guess in summary, I think I would say that we are really an infrastructure provider, and we believe that you need, if you're trying to get from point A to point B, you can walk there, but you get there much faster if you have a car. So we try to provide the cars. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ngosa. We'll hand over to Cindy. I hope everything is settled and sorted and we can begin. So yeah, take it over, Cindy.
Okay, thanks, Brenda, and thanks for everybody for the introduction. I'll just briefly introduce myself. I'm Cindy Ondego. I'm the founder and director of Mombasa Works. We are a co-working space and a learning space, and we exist to support the small growing businesses in our community, entrepreneurs, consultants, and we're based in Yali, Mombasa. I don't want to take us back, so I'm assuming we've covered the objectives of what we want to get out. I think we'll kick off right now with what is some of the impact that we've seen today. So we really want to try and shine a light on what is going down here in the coast region. So I think we can kick off, perhaps maybe we'll start with David. If you tell us a little bit about the impact. I know SOTE has been around since 2010. Can you talk a little bit about the impact that you have had to date?
Cindy, can you come up with the question again? I think I lost the beginning.
Okay, my question was around impact to date. SOTE Hub has been around since 2010, I believe. So if you can tell us a little bit about the impact that you've had today as a hub.
Great. Yeah. So for us, our focus was in education. So that's in the school system. So high schools and universities that are in Taita Taveta. And the motivation, of course, is the disconnect between the skills at education institutions and what's expected at the workplaces. There's a huge disparity. And so for us, our model is to develop startups. So we expose the students at a very early stage on how to start and run a business, and they are able to test until they come up with a real product. And we try to expose them to real clients so that they're able to learn at what's expected of them when they're out there. So we find this as low risk, of course. And two is that one of the other activities that we organize competitions, and so they're able to participate in both local Kenyan competition as well as global competitions. And to this enables them to test the viability of their ideas and compare to what their peers elsewhere are working on. And this type of pipeline has worked for us because so far we have incubated 40 startups and in different sectors. So we see a lot of renewables, and we see startups in e-commerce. We see in conservation. Savoy is the largest park in the country. It holds nearly a third of elephants. So there's the human-elephant conflicts. And so the issues that society or communities deal with in Tsavo, so those are at the very core of some of the business solutions. The training component, so beyond the supporting them to start businesses, we also prepare them on job skills. So how do you attend the interview? How do you write a CV? What are the soft skills you do in a workplace? Me and you, I don't know, but I think we are rarely taught some of this when we are in educational level. And so we also try to link them to job place. And to this end, we managed to train up to 10,000 young students into job preparedness. And so I will say in terms of in a nutshell, so that's more or less like impact. Now we work with over 200 high schools. We've been able to expand beyond Taita when we have the competitions. So it's no longer a coastal-based innovation competitions. We receive ideas from all over the country. And then we've been able to take groups to the US, and they have been able to participate in some of the innovation competitions and even win some of the awards. And so I think that's for us is where the missing link has been, is in terms of the content and the training in school is not commensurate with what the employers and what the market demands. And that's where that's the space that we play in. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, David. Milton, are you able to share with us a little bit about the impact you've had today, and then maybe talk a little bit about how you also configured, just very briefly?
Thank you, Cindy. At TechBridge, we have been in existence since 2016. But when we began working together with One University, and before we relocated somewhere around where we had our first startup, and that was Tsunami. Probably that is a brand name that we can easily be able to identify ourselves with. Up to now, I can be able to say that we have been able to incubate a total of around 22 startups. Our model is slightly different. We go for impact, but also we look on building businesses that can be able to have, that are scalable, that can also be able to be profitable, that are also solving solution, customer pain. We are also very keen to ensure that the businesses we are investing in have some social responsibility, in that they do no harm to people, they do no harm to the environment. That is essentially our model of operation. If you look at quickly, our sectors are spread across various sectors. We have those startups that are in tourism. We have those that are in artificial intelligence, mobility. We have those that are in renewable energy. We have those that are in automation. And so they continue. I can easily be able to say that, yes, we have had our own fair of challenges when dealing with startups. And I think this is something that we all need to come up together to be able to see what we can be able to put in place, in that we have to align what we get from the university sector and what we bring inside into the incubation hub. Because at the core of every incubation hub is to build innovation. The innovation has to be able to meet the need of the society, community, create jobs, sustainable jobs for that instance. And you find that there is still an existing gap that we at the incubation centers have, or the technology hub usually have to be able to meet on a daily basis. Because this is something that, these are myths that we have to try and solve, because you find that innovations, when we want to take our innovation to the West, they handle it with a lot of doubt. It's upon us now being able to build innovations that are homegrown and that can also be able to match the international level. In that, in our hubs also, we have also to be very keen at this particular time that we are adopting technologies and capability that can make us competitive in the world. That is a challenge for most of the hubs around. So in essence, in our KPIs, we are glad we have been able to create more than hundreds of jobs, starting from our startup that is Tsunami, and others that we have. We have been able to invest in more than 4 startups, and now that most of them are going into revenue phase. So that is the level of engagement we are having with the ecosystem. We wish we could be able to do more. And I think this forum gives us an opportunity to be able to tap from each other. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Milton. So I mean, collectively between, I mean, at least SOTE and TechBridge so far, we're talking of over 60 plus businesses incubated to date, which is fantastic. Just quickly, because we will have a discussion on how we're defining and how we're measuring success a little later. But so just give us quickly, tell us, do you have any other metrics other than sort of businesses incubated? Are you looking at, for example, longevity, 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line? Perhaps David first.
Yeah, I think that is how we look at it, because not just the numbers, but how long are they be able to stay in the market? I think today a lot of startups are looking at funding as soon as they come up with a startup idea, the next thing they're looking at is funding. I think what we are telling our startup is you need to be able to create a product that the market wants. When you have a market fit, you'll get customers. And so we try and model them in a way in which they are able to survive in the marketplace. I think for us, the big, in terms of the big impact is also the success of them out there, especially the ones that have been able to exit. And so I think we are talking about 70% success rate. So 2-3 years before exit, they are still out there doing business. So that's more or less how we look at it. So in terms of survival rate in the marketplace, but also in terms of number of customer acquisitions, and then also in terms of the impacts that are able to provide to the customer. So all these are important metrics, and we track that, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Milton, just very briefly.
Ideally, probably it would be just to add on top of that, in terms of measurement of impact, it's a very difficult area that we have a lot of scholars, professors, university discussing and coming with different models on how they can be able to measure the impacts. Basically, what I can be able to say with us is internally we look at our KPIs, where we started, what we have been able to do. We include in our metrics beyond we go beyond the metrics in our KPIs, because if you continue putting only the metrics in the KPI, then you miss the other part where you need the organization, you need the people, you need to know the metrics on your customers, are they satisfied, and all other things. Things that we try to look in our training. Even when we are training the startups, we prepare them in advance to be able to look at those small things, because at the end of the day, it's not only the numbers that is coming, the money that matters. It is also how you interact with the organization, how you're interacting with the customers, how you're interacting with the other stakeholders, how you're interacting with the policymakers. Those are very key metrics. And we can always be able to say, to see any incubation center or any hub running, it is a success story in itself, because there are a lot of challenges you have to be able to face on a daily basis.
You've led us very nicely into the next area that we'll be discussing, which is around our constraints that we collectively face as hubs in this region. And I mean, I think we'd like to start with Ngosa. I mean, you guys are the newest enabler in town. But clearly there was there was something that you saw in the environment, some constraints that are gaps that you thought that you could be best placed to fill. So maybe start with you, and then it would be great to get an input from everybody else as to what some of the largest constraints were so far in the journey, so we find commonality in that.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. I think as you mentioned, we are the newest ones here, and I think ultimately the way that we looked at it when we decided to set up our operation here in Mombasa was we look at a few key things. The first one was really that we felt that Nairobi was saturated, right? Whenever anybody was thinking about innovation, when anybody wanted to do something interesting, they would focus on building a Nairobi arm, which makes sense from an economic and financial perspective. But we really believed that there was this wealth of opportunity on the coast due to the fact that there's so many young people here. There's there's the opportunity for the blue economy. There weren't so many people focused on enabling compared to, for example, Nairobi. And then also we just thought that there wasn't in the sense one of the niches and needs that we saw was for what we particularly provide, which was, I think I said initially, was this idea of infrastructure. Right, this idea that yes, to enable is great, but it is very difficult to be enabled if you don't have the tools, for example, to write that code so you can start that business that is the next Deliveroo or whatever it is. So we thought that would be really the unique value add that we could bring here to the coast going forward. Naturally, there have been challenges. I think when you're setting up, just the bureaucracy is on another level. I feel like it's not generally towards the coast. It's just when you're trying to set up a business within the country, it makes it a little bit difficult, and you have to deal with that at all levels, right? So Mombasa is going to have its own issues when it comes to that. And then I think our main challenge as well has been garnering real community buy-in, right? Because we're so new, because we are, we've just appeared. Like, you need some level of legitimacy that a lot of the other hubs have, and I think something that we as Close the Gap can learn to benefit from as we work together, because working with Sote Hubs, Lilliput, all of those things, all of those different hubs would provide us a level of sort of legitimacy that we can't obtain so quickly. So I think that would be my thoughts on that.
Yeah. No, I mean, thanks for touching on this idea of community legitimacy, because I think as Mombasawats, we certainly felt similar challenges when we were first setting up as well. And Sote Hub and TechBridge both seemed to have formed early partnerships with students or technical university higher education organizations. And I'm wondering if that might have been also for the same purpose of legitimacy, or is it more there was a need there? But just within the context of constraints that you faced setting up both Sote first and then TechBridge, before we move into the next part of our discussion.
Thanks, Cindy. I think this is so beyond the infrastructure. For example, I think Mombasa, you are a bit better off. You don't have blackouts that we experience in Taita, for example. And when you look at broadband, so I mean, perhaps there are certain areas where you only use edge. So it becomes a challenge, especially when you are designing some schools program and you want to, for example, have e-twinning activities between different schools. That is already an issue. And so beyond the infrastructure, which I think is a government function, and that has to be done because citizenry, of course, pay taxes, is the other aspect is funding. I think we all been following what's happening in the social media, and there's a lot of debate and discussions about the funding ecosystem in this country, and that Kenya, of course, is number 3 in Africa in terms of funding that comes foreign into the startups. But if you dig deep, you find maybe only less than 20% of that funding goes to indigenous startups. Of course, this is not a discussion more or less in terms of the Black Lives Movement that I'm trying to come up with. But I think when you are sick, the first is to accept that you need help. So that's the first process of healing, that you need help. Then you go to a doctor. and then you follow this prescription. I think the funding ecosystem in country is sick, and the challenge of hubs like what we have at the coast, and not just for us at the Kenyan coast, is can we be able to look inward as ecosystem enablers? What is it that we can be able to mobilize within ourselves so that we have sort of like a bottoms-up approach? A typical Kenyan investor will buy a matatu or buy some plots in Vipingo and especially invest in traditional sector industries. I think if you go to the US, for example, 6 out of 10 billionaires have made their money in tech startups or tech businesses. I think the list in Africa is still being compiled of the number of billionaires in the tech ecosystem. And so the work of hubs like ourselves is how can we be able to engage, for example, the high net worth individuals, and that we can be able to have this discussion. I think when we discovered that we needed a body that can be able to speak for us, we came together and formed ASEC. And ASEC gave us a voice that we are able to champion our rights on some of the issues that are happening in the house. And I think it's something that's doable. Every day when I come from Malindi, for example, Malindi to Mombasa, I see hundreds of young people lining the streets. I think they go to Mombasa Cement, I think on Sundays, and they get food rations, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with the philanthropic. But can we be able to turn this into some of these corporate supporting businesses in Mombasa or at the coast generally? Because I think for me that is more sustainable. And I think I was listening to a podcast. Yeah, I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago, and there are nearly 49 angel networks happening in Africa. Perhaps it's time to have that discussion where Mombasa can have another angel network, because funding, I think, is you can do whatever you do, amazing business models, whatever you try to do. But if that funding is needed for the next phase, then that's an issue. Sorry, I've taken a bit of time within that, but number two quickly is to discover really what's unique about the coastal Kenya. So in terms of what are the product lines that makes the coastal Kenya unique. And as long as we don't have a product fit, because if you look at the coast, for example, you are big in agribusiness. So you're talking about cashew nut, coconut, and mangoes. You're talking about tourism, you're talking about mining, you're talking about the sea industry. So I tend also to think that some of the startups that come out of our spaces may sometimes find it fit to make business out there. But if we go back and redefine really what the society needs, and that we focus especially on ideas that solves people's challenges, then these startups are able to succeed in the marketplace. So that, I think, is maybe 2 points I can be able to talk about, but those tend to be some of the issues we deal with there.
Yeah, there's a question actually here for you from Simon Adea, who's asking about donor fatigue in the hub spaces in the coast region and how real it is, and whether we're over relying on donor funding without accountability and sustainable results. And I think you've touched on this because you've spoken about the need for us as an ecosystem to look inward as well, because there is donor fatigue, not just in this space, but generally the development space. A lot of countries are looking inward now. But if you'd like to just very, very briefly speak to that, I think it's a right.
Yeah, I think there's donor fatigue. Yeah, thank you for that question. I think there's donor fatigue not just for hubs, but in the whole ecosystem. Even Kenyan government, I think, should be having these issues.
Yeah.
And I think it's a challenge not just for us, but for all the Kenyan players or the ecosystem. It's okay to get the grant to start up the hub, but I think it's not okay to keep the proposal writing. I think the challenge for us, the hub, is how can we be able to define a good, sustainable business model? What value are we able to extract? And when you're able to marry these two, then you find that the stakeholders, so you're talking about the government, you're talking about the academia, and you're talking about the private sector, they're able to find value in the hubs and they're able to pay for the services in the hubs. And so I think for me, that's really the big, if you take, for example, the county governments, they need all sorts of services, whether it's ERP systems for the HR, for the hospitals, for revenue collection, they were digitizing all those systems. And so there is an opportunity for us. So I think beyond donor, I think now the conversation needs to be looking at what resources are in our hubs and what opportunities, and let's make business out of the hubs and beyond the graphs.
Yeah, great. I mean, it's we can't have it was very, very rare to have a discussion about anything in the coast region without this lingering narrative of marginalization or resource constraints, or but in the entrepreneurship space, there is this prevalence of this narrative around we don't have a hustler mentality down here compared to what we'd have in Nairobi. And I think there's one or two questions that speak to culture and language and the impact that has had perhaps in why our ecosystem might be a little bit slow on the uptake perhaps in some people's eyes. Can I invite maybe Milton to speak to this?
Thank you, Cindy. I would really be able to talk from experience. I don't think it is a Mombasa thing alone. I remember when I start my introduction, I gave a small narrative about the challenges that our African startups are encountering in the market, in the world market, the global market. And one of the biggest challenges they seem to encounter most of the time is the notion that the quality of the innovation that is coming out of them is not up to date. So it's not an issue about Mombasa. If we begin to put the narratives around the coastal region, then we might miss the bigger picture. The bigger picture is how do we try to change that narrative, and how do we work closely with the people that we have entrusted to be able to give entrepreneurs quality education. It's not about an issue of access to education. You see, if we put more emphasis on access to education, then we also have to emphasize the quality of it. For any ecosystem to develop, there has to be those two components. Yes, there has to be access, but again, there has to be quality education. And that is something I think we are working around it by trying to tap from key sources, technical universities around the coastal areas. And that is around Pwani University and any other technical colleges that are around. And the key why we try to do that is because we understand that for the economy to be able to develop and to change, and for Africa to change, it essentially entails that having the ability of having successful startups such that they can have impact in the ecosystem. It is an issue that it cannot be addressed by one person. So yes, that would be said that that is a mindset, but I don't think so, because we get a lot of good quality startups coming in from Mombasa. The only thing that we have to do is probably we have to spend more time with them to be able to ensure that are they able now to turn around what Mombasa can be able to provide? Can they be able to use their competencies to forge into tourism, hospitality, banking, farming, shipping, logistics and transport? Tap into that. Those are the competitive areas that they can be able now to tap in. That is what we need to be able to put into their system. When we are doing our design thinking, which we have been trying to do as much as possible, can we be able to put that mentality among the entrepreneurs so that they can now be able to see already the opportunities that are available, then begin to tap into them. We can't say that we need a Nairobi solution for Mombasa problem. We definitely need a Mombasa solution for Mombasa problem. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, I'll just not to stay on this point for too long, but there is what you did touch on just then, Milton, was that there is a difference between the fact that there are innovations and entrepreneurs that exist, and there is a vibrancy, however nascent here. But then we've also got to be able to advocate and tell that story as well. Otherwise, a dominant narrative will continue to prevail.
Hi, Cindy, if I can just add to that,
Sure.
two points, I think. The first one is, I mean, I've only been here for about a year. Closing Gap has been here for maybe a year and a half. But I think just generally, all you have to do is go to Congo Air and you see that they're hustlers in Mombasa, guys that are really pushing hard every day to make ends meet. So to me, it's really about taking that energy that they already have, because it's there, and directing it towards sort of different avenues, and making our hubs a place that they feel that they can go to, and that there is no barrier to them. Like Close the Gap or Mombasa Works or Salt Hub is a place that they can go and get from point A to point B with the goal of eventually making an income, because that is why they go out there and they hustle in different ways. And then lastly, I think I just wanted to add to the point that David made early on about grant funding and it drying up. I think a fundamental shift generally needs to happen to move from grant funds to investment funds and homegrown investment funds from individuals, right? So we have a lot of high net worth individuals in this country, billionaires, like billions and billions of shillings, and basically getting them into our spaces to take a long-term view on these young people and on these businesses, right? Understand that it does mean probably making losses for the first 5-6 years, but then year 7, year 8, that's when you really have sustainable businesses that grow and become something positive. So I think that's just again my 2 cents on that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Gotha. So I mean, we want to shift a little bit. We've talked about the landscape so far, some of the constraints. We want to shift a little bit and think to the future. And we want to be part of this shift from the coast region perpetually being a region that has potential into one that's actually actualizing that, and moving from something that's inspiring. We don't want to continually be inspiring. We actually want to be acting on it as well. So we want to talk about the future, and we want to, I think one thing that would be very important for us to do that we've discussed all is defining what that would look like for the coast region. I think we've touched on already so far about how we need to craft an ecosystem around the market that exists, the opportunities that exist. David talked about doing that around elephant conservation being based in Voi. Ngosa, you mentioned blue economy briefly. So we want to define what that looks like for the coast region. But also more broadly, I mean, do we see the coast region being a magnet for entrepreneurs from all over the world, or do we want to breed local entrepreneurs here and create that culture of risk-taking and innovation? Do we want to build unicorns, or do we want 10, 20 years sustainable businesses? Not that they're mutually exclusive, but let's have some ideas of what success looks like for each of you. And very briefly, should we start with Milton then?
Yeah, thank you once more, Cindy. Success is quite a relative term, but I would want to be able to assume that success is something that is quite positive, is something that is result-oriented, is something that is visible, that no one can wish it away. Our success story, I would barely be able to say, runs around being able to see your startups generating revenue, employments being generated. You begin to see that you are beginning to tap into the ecosystem, turning out something that would barely have made no impact were you not in the ecosystem. Something new is coming out of the entrepreneurs, an opportunity that you tapped from an entrepreneur. You are able to convert that into a business case, a success story, and you can be able to see them winning in different places. You begin to see them, your startups shining whenever they're getting recognition, national recognition. You see them appearing on the medias, and that is a very good success story to begin with, because it is not something that you get overnight. It's upon inculcating some good attributes among them that at the end of it, you can be able to realize those gains. It doesn't come without challenges. As you all know the story, roses always grow on thorns. So I would say those are the success we are able to take pride in. And it's not the end, we have just begun. It is not much, but we can be able to say that we anticipate that the future looks much more brighter. Thank you.
Thank you, Milton. Thank you. And Robert from Swahili Pot Hub has also joined us. So Robert will just give you an opportunity to address this one now, which is, in case you did not hear, is the question is around what success looks like. And I know the foundations of the Swahili Pot Hub were around unemployment and amongst young people in Mombasa. So it would be interesting to hear from you.
So hi everyone. I hope you can all hear me. I'm very sorry. I've been having network issues here. That's why I didn't join. But what I can say is that yeah, Swahili Pot has done a lot actually here in Coast, and to see how they can be able to give a bright future for the Coast people. And for the recent years that it has existed, we have seen a positive trajectory on the level of innovations that are happening here in Coast. So I can say the future is bright because people are starting to become curious. I think curiosity is what drives innovation, and we have seen that a lot of youths here in Mombasa are very curious to try out new things, to try out new innovations. And this gives us hope that to show that in the future is bright, because when you're not curious to do anything, you'll not be able to do anything. So that in itself gives us hope. And Swahili Pot, each and every day, we see a lot of youths coming here, trying this space, seeing someone else doing an innovation. That itself drives innovation. So when people come at Swahili Pot Hub, the networking culture that is here also is a catalyst for innovation, because you may find that if a youth is despaired and is seated at home, it's not very easy for that youth to come up with something exciting. But when he sees his fellow youth doing something, and maybe he had an idea, and he gets the motion or the zeal to also start his own idea. So that is what we have seen here at Swahili Pot Hub. The networking, the mentorship is really good, and that is also what is driving innovation. And I can say with that, there's a positive and a bright future for Coast.
Great, thanks, Robert. So from you, I mean, the success is looking like, from what I hear you saying, a lot about mindsets of young people being changed. We want to see more innovations and a culture innovation in this region. Next up, who did we get to? David, success.
Yeah. Thank you, Cindy. I think I'll still go back to maybe a point I'd made earlier. I mean, the moment we realize what resources we have and put them to good use, that we're able to turn them to create wealth, I think for me that will be the game changer. We have so much at the Kenyan coast, but there's so little. The coconut industry, in terms of value addition alone, does not employ more than 200 people. If you look at the cashew nut as well, so this is now focusing on agribusiness. Kenya used to be one of the biggest players in the international market. Today, I don't think we export more than 10,000, or the production 10,000 metric ton. And if you look at the processing, nearly all the factories that were at the Kenyan coast all closed, I think, because of regulations. And so the moment we'll be able to really use the local resources and see the opportunities, then I don't know how many of you are aware, but I think probably last week, there is a forestry company somewhere that raised $28 million. And these guys, their model is very interesting. They grow seedlings and then they give the farmers, and they harvest the seedlings after 3 years, and you share the profit. So on one end, farmer gets income, on the other end, environment benefits. And so these are indigenous sort of like solutions. And
Yeah.
for me, the success really is if we have more and more of success stories coming out of the course, is in terms of how many businesses are able to get into their 10th year birthday, have 100+ employees, and are able to generate substantive income. Then I think Mombasa will have turned the corner. And of course, the challenge, of course, is also how do we bring the whole ecosystem together? We've done so well so far with having the hubs come together and work through ASEC as through continent hubs. We cannot do it. Of course, we do not have the monopoly of knowledge. And so there are very key ecosystem players, the government, the regulators, the universities, the academia. I know the government, on the other hand, have had substantive goodwill efforts trying to bring change and inspire innovation in the country. I remember the enterprise fund that was created in 2015. I know there's White Box domiciled at the ICT ministry. I know there's Kwanza. Of course, there's a youth fund. Could there be a way or a sandbox in which the hubs and the government could be able to have a better working relation? Because one of the challenges is that sometimes they are launched in Nairobi, and really there is no integration of stakeholders, like for example. Today, I think either it's in this week, there is startup policy that will be introduced in Parliament. How many of the hubs have had an input or are aware that there's a startup policy that is being introduced in the Kenyan government? On the other hand, if you look at other African countries, this is something that is gaining quite currency, because if you're talking about startup policy, these are the things that affect the operation and the failure or success of startups. It goes all the way from taxation to registration to market to funding to the business environment. And so the success for me is all the players are able to realize the potential. I think I was listening to another podcast in which from Kenya Chamber of Commerce, and we are talking about the size of SMEs in the country. Nearly over 80% of businesses in the country is either small or micro. And then we have the missing middle, and then we have the large companies. And so it means that there are few startups that are progressing to the middle level. And so I think for me, this has to be a deliberate sort of like a working relation where both the startup hubs and the government, the investors, the private sector are able to work together to improve. But of course, Mombasa, like I mentioned, has immense resources and immense opportunities to get it to the next level.
Yeah, thanks, David. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about us as enablers and how we work together next. But I think, you began by saying that we need to realize what resources that we have available here in this region, and then be able to tap into that. And you went on to talk a little bit about the industries that have collapsed here, and the cashew nuts and the sort of dwindling coconut industry. And what I'm hearing you point to is government bureaucracy and regulation, as well as having been a constraint that led to that, or rather the reason that those industries collapse. So if we're able to lobby and advocate for better policies and regulations and enforcement of the same, then it will allow us to tap into those industries. Have I understood?
Yes.
Great. Okay, great. So still on this topic of success, before we move forward, Ngosa,
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add briefly. I think what everybody else is saying is solid. I would say that I think there's short-term success and there's long-term success, and I think from a short-term success perspective, I think what if we have young people within this ecosystem that are able to conceive of ideas, know how to register a business, understand how to raise funds, understand how to grow, understand even the differences between what is seed funding versus what is, growth funding, pre-series A, so they know where they're at and they're able to really track the growth of their business and are able to value their companies over time. And if we can create an ecosystem like that, I think to me that's really great short-term success because we would have made a really big leap from point A to point B. I think long-term success really is Guangzhou, right? Guangzhou was a fishing town, and now it's a tech hub in China, right? And I think Mombasa, there's no reason that can't be Mombasa's story, that can't be the story of the coast. I think it all just comes down to people and creating an environment in which those people feel like they can take their lives and their careers and their ideas to really the next level. Yeah, thanks.
Hey, I think I'll just press on here a little bit because I think in terms of creating this entrepreneurship community, do we want to be a region that attracts entrepreneurs that becomes this kind of mecca for entrepreneurs? Or are we really invested in, because I think the way we define it is how we're going to divert the resources. So we really then investing or want to invest more in like this local talent pool. Do we want to, these kind of headlines that we're seeing coming out of Nairobi and number of top funders from where and et cetera, is that something that we want to, do we want to avoid that in the coast region?
I think, I don't know, I think from a short-term perspective, I think that what would be very important is, I think, to get people in our region to understand that there is a market, that the region itself is a market, right? And therefore you need to create essentially products that people want within that market. So essentially not helping enable an ecosystem of entrepreneurs that are entrepreneurs for the sake of being entrepreneurs, but rather people who see something within their particular community that they know that they can turn into a product that they can deliver to their community. And then if it is indeed a good, solid product, other communities are going to want to take part in it as well. So I think, because I feel like that is the natural way in which a startup really grows and gains traction. So to me, I think we need to create an environment in which entrepreneurs create products for the coast region, informed by their experiences of being people who come from the coast region, because that has a unique perspective to it that you can't find anywhere else, and then that can be packaged and sold elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Gus. I like that. Does anyone else want to jump in here before we move on to our role as enablers?
Probably I wanted to be able to share something. I know my colleagues have talked about it. Essentially, I would give a testimony that most of our startups have appeared in the newspaper for very good reason. One is called Coleman Hatchery, appeared in the newspaper for a solar incubator that we incubated. We have one of our own brands, technology. It actually received a presidential recognition because of the technology they're able to do. And so we are having very good success story. The bottom line is trying to translate these issues into production, distribution, and consumption. That is what we are working on. That is the bottom line. If you cannot translate the startups into producing units, distributing units, and then having consumers, that is a challenge that we have to fix. I think that is the key thing that we have to find out on what can we be able to fix as an ecosystem. Yeah,
thank you, Milton. Yeah, very briefly. Very briefly, yes.
So, yeah, so also to add on what David has said, in the recent years, here witnessing at Swahili Pot Hub, there's been a huge crop up of startups. Let me say 2 years back, we have seen, like, I can give examples like Techies Africa. There's Pony Techno Girls. These are rigorous and audacious young people who are driving change in the fields of technology and also passionate about helping the people. So you see that I also did some few research according to data which we have collected and we have also read from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. We have seen that there's this one major challenge that most startups, they fail to see their second year or third year anniversaries. This is because to lack of understanding the market. So you might find that a lot of startups can start, it's very easy to start, but throughout the line, let's say 2 or 3 years down the line, you'll find that these startups may not continue, you know, and we did a research and saw that the main cause is lack of understanding of the market. That is why at Swahili Pot also initiated research departments, research and development, because we know with data, you can be able to make meaningful informations, you see. So we ensure that each and every startup here undergoes complete market research. And with that, we have seen that they have changed their products, they have changed their services to drive towards sustainability. And with this, I can see that it's also hope for the startups. This also shows hope for the startups that the future is bright. Yes, that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, sustainability, I think, has come out quite strongly from as one thing that we want our ecosystem to be defined via. We're not just starting businesses or churning businesses out of our incubation hubs, but we're seeing them through, and we're seeing 70-80% success rates, like with our friends in Voice. Right. I mean, this is so we've now seen what we've said. We've put it out there what success looks like, but it is a tough climate for us as enablers, right? We don't have, as you say, David touched on this already. You know, we also need to find viable business models. We can apply for a grant once, but you know, after that, we shouldn't spend our time writing proposals. So it is a tough climate, and we have a relatively young entrepreneurial ecosystem. I think it's safe to say. So how are we going to avoid some of the pitfalls as enablers that we've seen in other ecosystems, like competition for scarce resources, perhaps stepping on each other's toes in terms of competing projects, or just not being able to share information, and how are we going to be? How do we get around this?
Second go.
Yeah.
I think maybe two ways. I think the first is closer collaboration. I like the fact that we have Pwani Innovation Week, which happens every year. And yeah, the other day we were speaking with Robert, and of course this is usually a physical event, but I think COVID might be waiting for us if we do that. So we have to go online, and maybe an opportunity to test really the innovation that we talk about. Yeah, so I think for me is some of those joint programs is an opportunity for all ecosystem partners to come together. It highlights the opportunities, but also the challenges that is possible. And if this can be opened up in a way in which all hubs can be able to play a role in the organization of an event like this. And I think Swahili Pot have been excellent in organizing. Last year, I think it was very good publicity. But I think this type of events help us to see what we can be able to do together. Together, we absolutely are strong. Then the other thing I think is because of our associations through ASEC and through the country, what we realize is that, and maybe Chairman Bernard, yeah, I see him here, but through ASEC there was a funding, I think from possibility funding from World Bank. And this funding was meant to specifically go in terms of operational support, operational and program support to hubs. So if we have many of this funding, then it therefore covers the bottom line of also of some of the hubs, and that they will spend also more time doing what they are good in. And so I think that's the association like we have can be able to help in mobilizing resources and technical support and opportunities into the ecosystem. And then it relieves the pressure, but also builds everyone else. And of course, the third one is, I have never seen a school where they train how to run a hub. It's a relatively a new concept, I think, for us. I think the norm out there is people who have run successful business will most likely to be successful in running a hub. But two is that the hub is still also a new concept in these parts of the world. I think also through the government, the constituency innovation hubs. This was an effort perhaps in that direction. It has its own fair share of success and of course weakness. And so capacity building for hub managers, and now we are talking about what are the issues that can be able to strengthen our impact is there are gaps, and there are gaps in terms of technical capacities. And I'm open with this, even at our level as SOTA Hub, we don't have it all. And so if we can be able to have some of these programs that besides addressing the entrepreneur, but also focuses on the hub managers themselves. And I think that in a way contributes generally to the overall picture we are looking at here.
Yeah, those are very also concrete, very practical steps as well forward. Yeah, thanks, David. Ngosa, is that you ready to go?
Yeah. I think from our point of view, I think if you look at the hub as a business in general, I think that is key. You need to look at it as a business, and I think if there's one thing that we have learned, especially from COVID and going forward, is the importance of having diversified business models, and that is true of our hub, and that is true of the entrepreneurs and the business that we hope to bring out of this hub, to be able to instill that in them, is that having multiple business models or diversified business model reduces your risk when a shock like COVID happens, or when a shock within the market of any one of your business lines occurs. Because quite frankly, for example, if our sole focus was only on the work that we do as a hub, we wouldn't be able to be open right now, because in itself is not sustainable. But when you put it together with ability to apply for grants, with ability to sell assets from our place, you have a bigger pie and more room to be able to weather through the shocks. And then in that, I think also from a hub perspective or from a business perspective, it's if there's one thing, and a second thing that I think that has really come out of this particular crisis, and that we should really push for the future, is this idea of treating your business the way you treat your personal finances, right? Everybody should have, if they can, a savings account, right? In the sense that if something goes wrong, you know that you have that backup. But I don't think that's not taught in business schools. That's not, that's just that very simple idea, because naturally the impetus when you are running a business is to use your money to make more money consistently. That makes sense, but then that only makes sense if the environment is going to be completely stable for the next 100 years, which is never the case. Everything is cyclical. So I think from our perspective, that's one of the things that we're taking on as lessons for the future, and that we also hope to instill in collaboration with our partners here today.
Thanks, Ngosa. I'm just going to touch on something you said. The importance of diversification from a business model perspective, and just throw this back out to all of us. Perhaps as we think and as we wind up, we think about what are the ways in which we are going to be positioning ourselves to help the future coastal entrepreneur. And there has been growing consensus on the need for hubs to focus and to kind of define what it is they do, and then focus on what it is that they're good at. And I wonder whether that's something that is something that we could learn as a community as well, of enablers here, whether it's something that, in your views, has plagued us so far. Yeah, over to you. Maybe Milton, we can start with you. And then in the same as you sort of answer this, you can also just touch on what you feel at Bridge or another hub, your kind of key strength is, and how you're going to, leverage that for the future coastal entrepreneur.
Thank you, Cindy. To start with, probably it is good also to state that our call for application is currently open, and anyone keen on applying as an entrepreneur, you can always be able to check our website, and it is expiring at around 15th August. The reason why we have it open, it's because we believe in the powers of entrepreneurs in changing the society. The businesses of today, if they're harnessed well, invested in well, they're the biggest impact we can be able to see tomorrow. They're the biggest people that can be able to change the dynamics around how business is run. My take is that we need also now to be able to harness the digital gap that we are slowly closing. And if we can be able to encourage our entrepreneurs to be able to take that as a point to learn and be able to begin to tap into sectors that they can be able to use to scale into different areas. Because we are looking in a scenario whereby now we are having technology that can easily be deployed even up to the rural community. And that is a chance that our entrepreneurs can be able to take. I began by saying that we need homegrown solutions. The homegrown solutions will actually address the customer pain points that they are facing at the moment. And that is the way we can be able to tackle the threefold issues I spoke about: production, distribution, consumption. And essentially, we have had a lot of things that we would want to be able to bring in space, to bring in perspective regarding the ecosystem. A lot of my panelists have already mentioned that, and that is something that we can easily be able to have common ground and agree on how we can be able to do that. Funding being top of the perspective. Do you want to say anything, Cindy?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you that maybe if you can wrap up in the next 20 seconds and then tell us what your key strength is. What are you bringing to the table as an enabler for the future coastal entrepreneur?
Sure, that's fine. Thank you very much. What we bring in the platform, in the ecosystem, we bring a new sort of engagement. You find on our board or in our team, we have people that are very skilled in software. And that is the biggest area that we find that Africa has the biggest weakness. Areas that are untapped: information technology, artificial intelligence, matters of things, quantum technology, robotic, blue economy. These are the future. How we tap on it, we have to have a homegrown solution to it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Milton. Robert, do you want to go next?
Yes, thanks, Cindy. Yeah, so thank you very much. I also like to build up on what David has said, the issue of collaboration. You see, collaboration is one of the major aspects that we can be able to tap in. That's one gap. Maybe I can say we haven't realized it because these different hubs here in Coast, like Swahili Port Hub, Close the Gap, excuse me, Sote Hub, Tech Bridge. We cannot say that we are actually competing, you see, because we may find that taking a keen look, all these hubs have unique services and a unique way of operation. So we as the enablers for Coast Region should be able to have this eye, whereby we'll be able to look at what can I do to ensure that I collaborate, let's say, with the Swahili Port Hub or Close the Gap, to ensure that I'm giving good quality of service to our innovators. Because these are the people that will drive change, and these are the people who will make our future great. So the aspect of synergy for all the hubs, how to tap that synergy and make it useful for innovators is one gap that we have, and we need to see and work on how we can be able to tap on this. The other thing is that investment gap. Yeah, like I can give an example. Swahili Port Hub. We have checked our statistics. On average, every day at Swahili Pot Hub, we see around 100 to 200 people coming in and out of Swahili Pot Hub on a day. That's around a minimum of 3,000 to almost 6,000 youths that are coming to Swahili Pot Hub. That tells you something, see, and investments, people are hungry for driving change, and with that, Swahili Pot Hub has done a lot, but you cannot say we have done it all, because there's always this gap of investment, because you may find that the youth will come here, they have an idea, and they may want financial support, and it's not one, there are very many. So you may find that we may not reach out to all, but only few, the top people that we see that maybe this idea is viable and it can start immediately. That is when we can be able to offer support or mentorship support. Yeah, but the others, you may find that they may not get the actual support because of the lack of the investment gap. So this is also another gap that we'll also need to see how we can be able to drive our resources on, so that at least we can see that we are making an impact for our innovators. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. I also think one of the biggest strengths that Swahili Pot Hub definitely is like your ability to, as you say, mobilize and draw in a large number of young people, and the sort of the effect and the impact you can have is huge because of that, especially in one of your goals around changing mindsets and that innovation culture as well. So that's really great to hear. Very briefly, because we'd like to take some questions. There are a few questions that have come in, so we'd like to take those as we wrap up, and we've got about 8 minutes to go. So Gosa, just very, very briefly.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said before in my intro, I think our unique value proposition and what we bring hopefully to the coast and to Kenya and to East Africa in general is just this idea of enabling through technology and providing the tools in which to do that, and partnering. It's always been in our thesis of Close the Gap even before we moved to Kenya through our parent company in Belgium, to always work with locally based entities for many years with Computer for Schools Kenya. And as we move here in Mombasa, it is our goal to work with homegrown Mombasa entities to really see how we can help each other grow, and how what we provide as our unique value proposition can be expanded to our clients on the coast, and vice versa. Yeah.
Great. And then this piece about infrastructure and makerspace, right? I mean, that's also
Yes.
a very big X factor for Close the Gap Hub, at least from what I know.
That is true. Yes, it totally slipped my mind. But yeah, I think the two, I would say there's two. One is that we have noticed that obviously crafts, handcrafts are a really big part of the coastal ecosystem. And so we are essentially bringing in 3D printing tools, hopefully to be here by the end of the year within our hub, such that entrepreneurs and even just community members can learn how to use these tools to, for example, either better craft or maybe mass produce what they already produce. And that way, we are providing technological aspects and helping sort of improve or what is already existing locally. So we hope to have that here by the end of the year. It is all in the master plan. And then finally, I think the other point really is our digital trucks, our DigiTrucks, and their ability to be mobile learning centers that can go to the most remote areas within Kenya and generally in East Africa. And I hope to build, we've got 2 currently running in Kenya, one done with Huawei and Computer for Schools Kenya, and another done with Arrow Electronics. So we hope to build more so we can cover more ground with that. Yeah, thanks Cindy for helping me plug that.
Thanks, Gosa. And then David, lastly, if you can really summarize for us and go straight to your key strengths in 10 to 15 seconds, that would be great.
Yeah, for us, our key strength is in the schools project. So the ability to develop startups from schools. So either in high school or the university level. So That's the space we want. We don't want to do everything. We cannot do everything. And so we focus on what we can do better. When we have startups that want IoT or hardwares, I go to Swahili Box.
Yeah.
Ali and Ahmed
Which
does
is
a
great.
fantastic job in that.
Yeah,
so I think for us, our strength is in developing startups in education institutions, so high schools and universities.
I think, David, you just wrapped up telling us the key strength around school projects.
Yeah, absolutely, I did that. Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Can I go
Thank
next?
you so much, everybody. Yes. Who's left? Robert.
Me. Yes. Can I wind up? Just a few minutes.
Just you have 10 seconds because we want to take some questions before we wrap up. Just 10 seconds.
Of course. So I can say, of course, Swahili Pot Hub, one of our key strengths we are being known of course, is mobilizing. That is be able to see how we can be able to get different stakeholders so that we can work together and drive change. And what we have done so far in the recent years, Swahili Pot, we have tried and invested on our area. We can say that we are trying to change the story of how to do conferencing. That is why Pwani Innovation Week came in. And I'm sure if most of you have been to Swahili Pot Hub, you can't escape to see our beautiful view when you sit at the amphitheater. So that's one of our key strengths, whereby we want to drive innovations and big conferences here at Coast, and all those can be done here at Swahili Pot Hub. People don't normally want only to do conferences at the hotel. So that is the one thing that we are trying to change, and I believe we have taken that lead, and that is why we also want to involve each and every hub to ensure that we also drive positive change for the Coastarians generally. Yeah, thank you.
Robert, thank you very much. I think before I just quickly wind up with what we have discussed so far and some practical steps, just going through all the questions that we have received so far. And I think one of them is around what are the regular events, activities that bring the startup community in the coastal region together, and what is needed to boost these? I think Swahili Pot Hub, and we've spoken about the Pwani Innovation Week, definitely as an annual event, certainly. And as Mombasa Works, we held founders forums, which are sort of fireside chats with startup founders. I know there's Change Makers as well, another program that's run that's bring entrepreneurs together, again, with Swahili Pot Hub. I'm sure Close the Gap has got lots in its pipeline as well. Sote, okay, it is about coastal. So David, you can also chip in here, even though you're in Voi, it's still coast. And Milton as well. Do you guys run any events or activities very briefly for the startup community? And
Thanks, Cindy. Let me go first. Since you mentioned Change Makers, I also wanted to highlight on that. This is one of our rigorous projects that we're doing here at Swahili Pot Hub. And right now, we are calling for change makers, people who are out there in the community making an impact, not someone who has an idea and is waiting for money in his bed and so that he can start something. But we're looking for people who are already outside there doing something. And we're not only targeting business people. We are targeting anyone. It can be our coach, someone who is changing the story of young people. Instead of engaging of drugs in the evening, they train them. It can be anyone, not only business people. So this is the one rigorous goal that we want to achieve, because we have seen that with our statistics in Coast, around 1.8 million people are despaired. And we want to see how we can be able to drive this audacious goal and making an impact to these people. Of course, this will not be achieved in a year or 2 years' time, but whatever time we come, we can be able to reach out to this despaired youth. So that is why we came up with the Change Makers program. So if you see anyone else outside there who is making an impact, we have made that call. So they can apply here at Swahili Pot Hub, and we can see them making more impact. I mean, let's say someone is making an impact of impacting 100 people. So how are you going to uplift this person so that they can make an impact of, let's say, 200 people or 300 people?
Robert, I'm going to have to stop you there. Sorry. And give somebody else a chance to also just tackle this. I think it was TechBridge. If you guys have any startup events and things, you've mentioned already the program. So the incubation and accelerator program that's accepting applications at the minute. Ngosa, David, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think currently we are together with Liquid Telecom, we are running 21st CS skills. And so where youth are trained on cloud computing, cybersecurity, IoT, AI, data science. For 3 months, we already have like 100 students. So if there are startups out there or young people who want to get these skills for the next 3 months, go to our website and register. You get that opportunity. The other activity that we do is every year we do Soto Innovation Fair. And so this usually happens every July. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we couldn't do this year's edition, last year edition, so we did it, and we already have teams that we are preparing for incubation.
Yeah. Great, thanks, David. There is a question for David and Milton about challenges that you've specifically encountered while working with universities. I'd like to invite you guys to type that answer, because those are quite direct to yourselves. It's on the Q&A, so please feel free to address that. And I think the rest of those we've actually managed to address. So I think if Brenda will allow me just 2 minutes, I'll just touch on very, very briefly what we've covered so far before I hand over to her to close the session. So I think some of the things that we've touched on, and if thinking about the future coastal entrepreneur, the ecosystem down here in this coast region, some of the things that have come to light that we might need to work on, some practical next steps, would be something around common definitions. I think we've kind of touched on that, an idea of what it means to be a hub, what it means to be an incubation hub, a tech hub, and different sort of hybrids around that as well. Because we are starting to invite more stakeholders to the table. We are starting to sit with policymakers there. You know, David has touched on this as well. Universities, government of Kenya. There are so many more people who need to come to the table if we're talking about strengthening this ecosystem. So we really need to be able to, I think, demystify the language and how we talk about the ecosystem as well to allow for broader inclusion. I think that we briefly talked about strengths. I think that was certainly a highlight for me. It was really exciting to hear about how you guys all see your different strengths, from software development to infrastructure to mobilization and changing youth mindsets. I think we touched on this briefly. I would have loved to talk more about this, but we didn't get a chance. It's about the narrative and about owning that and challenging that, because it is clear that we do have innovations here. I mean, you've collected just 2 hubs within you have incubated over 60 businesses with 70% success rate for at least you guys, Sote. So as Mombasa Works, my excuse was always that I'm too busy trying to keep the lights on. I don't have time to tell stories or be part of something bigger. But I think what's clear is that we really do need to see ourselves as part of the whole and see ourselves as advocates for this region. I think there's a lot of, I think, David, you summarized it really well about sharing opportunities, about greater collaboration, the importance of association hubs, and really like harnessing those, the strengths of that, and really just buying into them and allowing them to advocate for us as well. And then a quite big one, we started to touch on it, but I think it will need more. And I remember a discussion going on at Kwani Innovation Week around this as well, about just the definition of success, of what we want to see here in the coast region. And I think we're at a really opportune time to be able to define that, both from an individual hub perspective, but also from a community, a wider ecosystem perspective. Like, what does it look like to be a successful or a healthy entrepreneurial ecosystem here in this region? And I think we've touched on the ability to respond to the local market and breeding local pools of innovators and entrepreneurs as well. And I think in terms of what we've touched on, I think that is the end of my summary. I would like to just, hand over to Brenda and apologize. We've gone a little bit over. I believe we started a little bit later, so I hope you'll allow that. And I'll hand over back to you, Brenda.
Thank you, Cindy. I think that was a really good discussion, and we've had some great insights from the Coastal Hubs representatives. I think it's a conversation that we've needed to have for a long time, just hearing what the regional conversation is, how you guys are defining success, how you're dealing with the challenges, and how you've been able to do better in areas that older hubs in the in Nairobi region have struggled with. So I think this is it. Thank you, guys. This is part of our member engagement forum. This time we've had Kisumu, we've had Mombasa. Our next one is in Nairobi, early first week of August. I hope you'll be able to join us and be part of the conversation. This can continue going forth offline. I saw a comment where when you're talking about research and data, Victor, who runs VIFA Consult, who runs VIFA Consult, said that he'll be delighted to work with the Coastal Hub. He's an amazing researcher. He also sits on the ASEC board and can help the hubs look at ways how to harness all that data and package it and make it work for you. We're moving into an area that's very data driven, so I think that's an opportunity right there. And I've loved the engagement with everybody. Let's continue this. Let's look for areas of collaboration. Next time we are having a conversation. If you've touched on finances and fundraising and really looking at how can we be financially sustainable, and this is something that ASEC wants to continue being exploring. So we're having a webinar next week on fundraising strategies and techniques for hubs. And it's not just your usual write a proposal, present it, spread it out and whatever, but it's like, how can you communicate your value? How do you direct this to the right people and actually make the right people come to you? So please watch out for that. It will be a good 2-day engagement to really delve deep into how do we communicate value and how can we have people coming to us to fund us and retain their power on the innovation and creativity and the value that hubs have. I am Brenda Kibiku, Head of Programs at ASEC. ASEC is a membership organization for enablers. We love having interesting people that are doing amazing things and promoting entrepreneurship. So be part of this community. You can email me or you can email our communications person to see how you can be part of this community. And thank you very much. Thank you so much for having this conversation. A quick shout out to Esther Ndeti, who opened the session. She sits on the ASEC board as advisor. I see our policy advisor, Anne Salim, here as well. I see Basil, who also sits on the ASEC board. I know our chair was here, and a few very interesting people that keep coming back for this ASEC community meetup, member engagement forum. And hopefully when all this crazy madness is over, we can finally come together and converse and have conversations on how to promote entrepreneurship and policy work. That is a big part of ASEC's mandate. We are a big part in developing the startup bill. I don't know if it's officially gone out yet, but we have been working in the background to get input on how can a policy really be put out there that represents and encompasses the needs of the startup and enabler ecosystem. And we continue to work on this and to push for this and to really try and drive this best way we know how, of course, with the backing of all the members and the ESO players. And yeah, so let's continue creating magic. Let's continue impacting the ecosystem. I will ramble and talk because this is officially over. So you are free to hang around and say hello to each other, but you're also free to leave and go do amazing things out there. But thank you so much for being part of the conversation. And yeah, say a quick hello if you recognize any names in this online interwebs. But thank you and have a blessed, lovely evening.